Tuesdays! My name is Kevin, and we're not learning karate. We are working on the GMAT. We are going to cover a very important concept, participles. And this came from a request from a student. They wanted to know more about what a participle is and how we use it. I should say right from the beginning that we're going to focus on one aspect of participles and ignore another part. The other part is how they lend a hand in our verb tenses. If you're curious about that, please make a request below in the comments. I'd be happy to help, but it's just too much for one video. Okay, so I've got my trusty orange pen and we can begin. So, a participle is a word, of course, talking about words, a participle is a word formed from a verb. So we take a verb, and it is used as an adjective or a noun. So you take a verb, and you change it a little bit, and use it as an adjective and a noun. That sounds pretty straightforward, but when you get into sentences, it can get a little confusing. So, here we have two examples. In the first example, we have a verb that became an adjective, running. So, the running dog is mine. Running here describes dog. It's telling us which dog to pay attention to. And run is usually a verb. We use it all the time as a verb. And so it can get kind of confusing, like how did this verb all of a sudden end up as an adjective? Well, that's because we have participles. Next sentence, sleeping promotes health. Here we took the verb sleep, added ing to it, and made it the subject of the sentence. It's a noun. We're talking about the concept of sleep, not actually doing the action or the inaction of sleep. So participle refers to a single word. Then we have participle phrases. This is the concept that I think really causes trouble on the GMAT and something to pay attention to and understand. So in this example, the dog, seeing the squirrel, ran faster. Wants to get the squirrel. So here, all of that is a participle phrase, beginning with our participle seen. Here we have crawling into bed. She fell asleep. So the beginning of the sentence here, we have this phrase, crawling into bed, she fell asleep. And the crawling into bed is our participle. So this leads us to our big idea. Participles and participle phrases are what? They are something very important. They are modifiers. They modify things. They tell us about something else. So, modifiers. Excellent. And so, where this becomes tricky on the GMAT is you might see a participle phrase. They might use a very long participle phrase in a sentence, and you'll see, like, this verb, seen, or crawling. You think, oh, there's the main verb of the sentence. But don't be tricked. They're putting that in there to complicate things. And the key is to ignore the participle. Get the participle out of the way, get the phrase out of the way, and like I said in my previous video about cutting through the mess to get to the, or cutting out the fluff to get to the core meaning, participles and participle phrases need to be cut out so you can get directly to the meaning of the sentence. Here is an example from the official guide. This is the 13th edition, question number 111. It's a sentence correction question. And it says, a mutual fund having billions of dollars in assets will typically invest that money in hundreds of companies, rarely holding more than 1% of the shares of any particular corporation. So, a couple things to point out here. We don't just have one participle phrase, which is in the underlined portion here, rarely holding more than 1% of the shares of any particular corporation. That whole thing at the end there is a participle phrase. We do have an adverb here, but that's describing the participle. But we also have another participle up here too, having billions of dollars in assets. you would think having is the main verb. You're like, mutual fund, having. You're like, oh, there we go. But actually, you need to cut that out and see that it's will typically invest. That's the main verb of this sentence. So it's really a mutual fund will invest. And then we have the predicate here, that money in hundreds of companies. And so this participle phrase needs to refer to the mutual fund. It needs to be the predicate of the mutual fund. And we had an answer choice. This is the incorrect answer choice. And you might think, oh, well, I have having here and then holding here. Oh, I'm going to keep these parallel, these verbs parallel, and add and and. And rarely do they hold more than 1%. And that will, you think, keep the sentence in parallel and correct maybe this weird phrasing at the end. But if you know about participle, whoa! Well, there's an earthquake. If you know about participle phrases, you'll know that this is going to change the meaning. No longer, rarely do they hold more than 1%, does it refer to our mutual fund. It changes it and is no longer the predicate of mutual fund. Also, another problem here too, no longer do they, we have a plural pronoun, when really we would need a singular one. So the answer choice here, this is actually written correctly. The answer choice was A here. So this is a good example of how to use a participle phrase as the predicate of your sentence. All right, if you have any questions, I know this is a tough concept, please do ask questions below. And if you have a request for a video, please make a request. We're always looking for new ideas and things to do. That's it from me today. Be excellent to the universe, and I'll see you next Tuesday.